Sadhanas from Ribhu Gita by His Holiness Sri Swami Shantananda Puri Maharaj. Chapter 8. All is Self Alone. All this world is the Supreme Self and nothing else exists other than the Atman, that is, Self alone. The Self is always in the form of eternal bliss. It is of perfect nature and is not lacking anything. It is holy and eternal. Its form never undergoes any change. It is pure. Self is a source of all peace and lack of peace. The individual self is verily the Supreme Self. The mind, full of thoughts, and the no-mind state belongs to it. There is only one self, and it is always of the same form or nature. As it is ever liberated, it is bereft of bondage and liberation. Its very nature is liberation or freedom. There is nothing else other than the Self. The Self is both dual and non-dual in nature. There is nothing like multiplicity or non-duality in the Self. As there is only one changeless Self, it can neither be considered as full of joy or as bereft of joy. The Self is one whole and has no parts. It is blemishless. It has become the intellect. It is of the nature of bliss. It is unborn. The Self is always directly present. The Self is proved as it is always directly present. In its nature, it is alone and nothing else exists besides it. The Self is bereft of any longing for liberation, that is, as it is ever liberated. It is in the form of the sound, that is, refers to Om. It is in the form of control of all the senses. It is withdrawn at all times from the senses as it has no senses and there are no worldly objects apart from the Self. As Self alone is, and as there is no sheath covering it, the various sheaths like matter, that is Annamaya, vital breath, the mental sheath, the intellect, and the sheath of bliss do not exist. They are all imagined for sadhana, that is, practice purposes. Similarly, there is no undifferentiated samadhi state or differentiated samadhi state, nor is there any other samadhi by concentrating on the sound of Om, that is, which is nearest to the ultimate truth. There are no three types of bodies to be transcended, namely, the gross, the subtle, and the causal. These are again imaginations in order to get rid of the body consciousness. The aphoristic meaning of Mahavakyas, that is mega statements like I am the Brahman or that thou art, are not applicable at all as nobody remains to contemplate on them except the Self. The various states like the deep sleep and the dream do not apply to the pure Self. As it is pure and an everlasting consciousness, it is bereft of all thoughts. It is bereft of the triad, namely the knower, the known, and the knowledge. The past and the future are contained in the Self. It is imperishable and is of the form of consciousness. It has neither the beginning nor the middle. It is the one Self which appears as many. Words stop in the Self and the Self is their limit. The bliss we get by whatever is indicated through words is all due to the self. The self rejoices in itself. The self remains alone without all this world and can also be called the self of all. Always look at your own self. What all is yours should be considered as the self. Enjoy your own self. There is nothing else other than your own self. Be content with your own self. Fill up yourself with the self. Consider yourself as nothing but ashish, that is, as there is no you. One should praise the self at all times. Always nourish yourself. Always desire for the self. Worship the self always. All the 5 basic elements like earth, water, etc. belong to the self. The mind, intellect, ego, etc. belong to the self. The mantra, that is sacred syllable, its chanting and this world all belongs to the self. All the qualities of basic elements, namely smell, sound, etc., tanmatras, belong to the self. This world, dreams, and one's own sleep belongs to the self. There is nothing else but the Atman. Whatever is seen, that is world and its objects, is all self. All the people belong to the self. Lord Shiva, that is director of disposals and destruction, and Lord Brahma, director of production, are all nothing but the self. The sun, all the sentient objects, meditation and its result all belong to the self. The Guru and the disciple are nothing but the self. Our goal is only the self. All the holy places of pilgrimage are the self. Our fears, anxiety, delusion, greed, learning, anger and directions are all the self. All the secrets, all that is auspicious and pure are all the self. Here it is all the self. There it is all the self. Everywhere it is the self. It is the absolute truth. Even by continuous hearing that all is self, a person gets liberation. Here ends chapter 8.